To remove the valve cover, you will need to remove the wiring and coil for the spark plugs. The plugs can remain in the engine if you like. The 6 spark plugs on the M104 engine are located under the cover on the top of the valve cover as indicated by the red arrow. Start by disconnecting the MAF sensor. The MAF is held in place by 2 clips to the air filter box, red arrow, one shown and one below. A single clamp to the intake tube, yellow arrow, and the wiring harness as indicated by the green arrow. Turn the locking ring on the harness, red arrow, counterclockwise. This will separate it from the connection on the MAF, yellow arrow. Separate it from the air filter lid by pulling back on the 2 clips, red arrows. You can leave the MAF attached to the tube and remove the MAF and the tube together. Remove the 2 10mm nuts where the air intake tube attaches to the valve cover as indicated by the red arrows. Disconnect the air intake temperature sensor, red arrow. There is a single hose clamp that holds the intake tube to the throttle body. You will need to reach in between the water pump and the intake runners with a long flathead screwdriver, red arrow, to loosen the clamp. With the clamp loose, remove the intake tube and MAF from the top of the engine. There are 6 5mm Allen bolts that hold the access panel to the top of the valve cover as indicated by the red arrows. Use a 5mm Allen and remove the bolts and washers, red arrow. There is a diagram on the top of the cover that illustrates the coil and plug distribution, as indicated by the red arrow. Remove the cover from the top of the engine. This photo illustrates how the number 6 coil also fires the number 1 plug, red arrows. The number 2 coil also fires the number 5 plug, yellow arrows, and the number 4 coil also fires the number 3 plug, green arrows. You're going to be removing the coils and wires completely from the head. It's a good idea to number them first for ease of reinstallation. Separate the wiring harness from the coils, red arrow. With the 3 coil wires disconnected, remove the harness from the top of the engine, red arrow. Pull the spark plug connectors up by the hard plastic part as indicated by the red arrow. Never pull the connector up from the wires. You can pull the connector for the coil over plugs up by the coil itself, red arrow. Remove the coils and the plug connectors from the engine. You are going to remove the 12 10mm bolts that hold the valve cover on, red arrows. It's a good idea to loosen and tighten these bolts in a criss-cross pattern. The 2 bolts along the right side of the valve cover hold a bracket for the vacuum line as indicated by the red arrow. The bolts are long and sit in a metal sleeve, red arrow. At the top of each bolt is a rubber washer and a large washer, yellow arrow. Do not lose these. There are 2 areas in the front of the valve cover that you can use to help separate the cover from the head, red arrow. Tapping the cover with a soft rubber mallet can also help. Never pry on the surfaces between the head and the cover. This will only cause gouging in the metal and eventual oil leaks. Never hit the cover with a hard hammer. This can lead to cracked valve cover and an expensive purchase to replace it. Remove the cover from the front, taking care to clear all the lines and wiring on the rear. Remove the old seal around the edge, red arrow, as well as the seals around the spark plug opening, yellow arrow. Thoroughly clean the cover, making sure to completely remove the old gasket. You can use something made of wood to help clean the grooves. Never clean the grooves of the cover with anything metal or a screwdriver. Thoroughly clean the mating surface on the head, red arrow, making sure to include the area where the spark plug gaskets will sit, yellow arrow. Install new gaskets onto the valve cover and lower the cover onto the head, making sure that everything is sitting flush and that the gasket did not slip off the cover. Tighten and torque the valve cover in a criss-cross pattern starting from the bolt near the spark plug openings. Installation is the reverse of removal. Thanks for watching. Click here to view the original article along with hundreds of other DIY content for your car.